Hi, it's Mark from Top Local Lead Generation. We're here with Vancouver's award-winning real estate agent, Mr. Paul Toffoli. Um, Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Mark. Yourself?
I'm good. So we're going to talk about subject removal, and I guess really what we have to start with is what's the due diligence that you have to do before you can do that?
Sure. So, as we've talked about previously, as part of the negotiation process, we're going to have certain subjects. Typically, we're going to have certain subjects that are going to be part of an offer. So that would be things like financing, inspection, property disclosure, title search. Those are sort of typical ones on single-family homes. On strata properties like condos and townhomes, we're going to have reviewing the strata documents, the minutes of the annual general meetings, the regular meetings. And there's a whole other layer of things that we can talk about when we go into stratas. But basically, over the course of, say, a week to 10 days, we're going to go through this process of due diligence where we're going to make sure that the bank's going to finance the property for my clients, and that there's no strings attached, because people get pre-approvals, but there's always strings attached. So you want to get those strings all dealt with. Then you have the home inspection done. We read those strata documents, get any questions answered regarding those strata documents. Look at the title, make sure that if there is anything on the title, that it's something that can be easily removed, so that there's not a Liz Pendens or something else. We've got the right names of the sellers on the contract. All those little details. And finally, any disclosure issues that may be dealt with. And there can be other things. It can be subject to the sale of the current my client's or the buyer's current property. Those types of things. So we go through that process. Tick all those boxes. Cross the T's, dot the I's, however you want to put it, and make sure that everything is in order, so that there's a comfort level. And there's always a little unnerving, a little stressful, because it's not something that people do every day. But we go through that process and get as much information as we can so that we have a comfort level removing those subjects. The subject removal is just a very simple signature on an addendum of the contract. Clients sign that. The seller does not need to sign that typically, because most of these subjects will be for the sole interest of the buyer. There can be seller subject. That's a different story.
Mm.
So once our clients have gone through the process and they're comfortable that they've done all their due diligence, they're ready to commit 100% to purchasing the property, then we sign a simple addendum to the contract that's a subject removal. In conjunction with that, there's typically a deposit that's payable either at the time of the subject removal or within 24 or 48 hours of the subject removal. It's typically done by bank draft. So the client goes to the bank, gets a bank draft from the teller in the amount of typically around 5% of the purchase price, but that's previously negotiated as part of the contract. They sign the subject removal. That deposit check comes into my office. It goes into our trust account and goes towards the purchase price on closing. And that's the next big step, is the closing. What happens then?
So what are some of the, like you mentioned, there's strings with, say, financing. So can you give a couple of common sort of strings that people
Sure.
might run into?
So in financing, banks will typically do, or mortgage brokers will typically go through a pre-approval, a financing pre-approval process. But that pre-approval may be subject to seeing your notice of assessment from the last 2 years from your taxes. It may be subject to a confirmation letter from your employer saying that you're a permanent employee, that you're not on probation, stating what your salary is to make sure that it lines up with what you've told the mortgage broker. It can be subject to confirming any outstanding debts, any credit checks, that types of things. There's usually a list of items, and you just want to make sure that all of those, once you are ready to remove subject, all of those subjects from the bank on your financing are gone, so that you don't have a risk that they're going to say, oh yeah, it's fine, except for your NOA didn't add up to what we thought it did, you can't get your financing.